Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. Today's topic is going to be about sustainability of the future generation, by the future generation, and for the future generation. I think that the solution to India's net zero carbon equation lies in the hands of the future generation. If you talk about sustainability, I think we've always looked at sustainability like a compliance subject, something that we need to do to meet minimum requirements or mandatory or regulatory requirements. In some cases, we've looked at sustainability as a nice thing to do as an add-on. But really, sustainability has not embedded itself into the core DNA of every activity that we do. And that is the most important requirement going forward. I think we have to change our thinking and an approach from an altruistic approach to a strategic importance approach where we actually start embedding sustainability into everything that we do. From the recently concluded COP26 Glasgow summit, we know that pressure is mounting on countries, on economies, and organizations to operate more sustainably. And there's a sense of urgency today than there was ever before. So, what does this mean to India? In India, we're very uniquely poised to address this whole climate change and sustainability issue. On one side, we have sustainability already embedded into our culture and into our traditions. But on the other side, as the country grows exponentially in the next 10, 20 years, we're going to have a huge challenge on our hands because we need to ensure that we develop in a sustainable manner, not just to sustain our own economy, but actually for the benefit of our society and for the entire planet. So today I'm going to talk about how do we solve India's net zero carbon equation and what is the role of the future generations in this equation. When we talk of net zero carbon, there are three areas that we focus about. One is obviously reducing the emissions of our existing activities, our industries, our infrastructure, buildings, and our operations. The other is, since India is going to be on a developmental path, we need to ensure that the future construction, future infrastructure that we put up is zero carbon right from day one, because we don't want to do the same mistakes that we did 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And the third thing is, in order to achieve our zero carbon goal, one of the most important and critical things is going to be innovation, and how as India we can actually set up low cost innovative models for low carbon, zero carbon materials, products, and technologies is going to be a very important factor in our path towards net zero carbon. So the first part, how do we focus on reducing the emissions of our existing infrastructure, buildings, and our operations? When we look at that, we look at three or four major areas. Energy use reduction is obviously one of the most critical aspects. There is no discussion about carbon without energy, and we can't stress enough, no matter how much we do, that energy has a very important role to play. When we talk of energy use reduction, there are two approaches that we need to take for our buildings, infrastructure, and even for our operations. One is obviously we need to ensure that all our existing equipment, machineries, processes, and systems are audited, and we ensure that we enhance, improve, retrofit, or even replace them to become energy efficient so that we can reduce our current carbon footprints. But along with just the replacement of systems or equipment, another important component is actually the fact that we need to ensure we relook at the way we do our activities and our businesses. I'll give you a very simple example. For the last 20, 30 years, all our buildings, we operate on what is called as a fixed desk concept. Everybody has a workstation for him or her that they go in and then they do their work. And when it is weekends, weekdays, holidays, non-peak hours, you still have a lot of people working. So when you look at a building, you have in every zone 20, 30, 40 people working. And the entire building infrastructure runs for a handful of people because they're all over the building spaces. Option of flexi desking is becoming very popular, wherein as you walk in and swipe your entry cards into the buildings, it actually tells you which floor, which workstation you should occupy. And this is being done not because of convenience, but because of optimizing all your systems and your energy use for the building. Energy use reduction, like I said, is going to be a very important aspect, but so is energy generation. Today, most of our power-based systems are coal-based systems, which is highly inefficient and highly carbon intensive. I know we are moving very quickly towards renewable energy systems, including solar and wind energy as a country. But then there are newer technologies. For example, hydrogen fuel cells to power our buildings, powered by green hydrogen. There are new technologies that we need to embrace that are clean and green in order to reduce our energy footprint from energy generation. Another important area in existing infrastructure that we need to look at is transportation and mobility. Of course, our public transportation system has to change and it has to become a lot more efficient. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the private transportation. Today, we have thousands of IT companies and manufacturing industries running thousands of buses to bring lakhs of their employees from work and home. And all of these are petrol or diesel powered systems. If we are able to move to alternate energy sources, even electric vehicles, hydrogen or gas-based power vehicles for the future, we can bring down our carbon emissions significantly. A fourth area that existing operations need to look at is greening our supply chains. Not much of thrust happens in this area. You'll be surprised at the amount of products and consumables an average grade A office space consumes over a year. This could include their products, their consumables, even food, and all of the regular things that they need for their operations. We have to start asking a few fundamental questions. Is this absolutely essential for our operations? Is there a better alternative? Are there local options that are available so that I can reduce my carbon footprint because of transportation? So greening supply chains is going to go a long way. A simple example of a study that was done for one of our clients some time back is on the food area. Food production, food transportation, and even food waste management is highly carbon intensive. So any measures that we can do to reduce it goes a long way. This organization asked three fundamental questions in terms of they started relooking at what they served, how they served, and how much quantity they served. And you'll be surprised, just addressing these three issues, they were able to bring down both the food wastage and their carbon emissions by close to 30%. So that is a sizable area that we can focus on. So existing operations, buildings, and infrastructure can do very many things to reduce their carbon emissions. But on the new infrastructure, I want to talk a little bit about that because in India, we're going to be growing exponentially. Many reports say that 70% of India is yet to be built, be it housing, be it healthcare, be it infrastructure for our various services. All of this is going to come up in the next 20, 30 years. And we need to ensure that it comes up in a sustainable manner right from day one. So what are the things that there are many measures that we can take and implement, but I'm going to talk about something called as the 3Ds: decarbonization, dematerialization, and deconstruction. The way we put up a building is very important. The greenest way is to not build at all. The moment you build, you're having a negative impact on the environment. So what are we trying to do is we're looking at improvements in our construction technologies, our construction techniques, our construction practices in a way that we can reduce the carbon emissions for the entire construction process itself. Decarbonizing the construction industry is very important. Dematerialization is equally important. A great AIT office today that you walk in, which looks fantastic, and a lot of people are proud of their workspaces. There are 100 plus materials that is used in that office. If you take a simple wall, for example, in traditional days, we probably had wall plastered and painted, but today you have wall paneling, you have wallpaper, you have fabric, you have claddings, stone finishes. There are so many materials that come into our workspace. A fundamental question, do we need so many materials? Maybe not. Every material that we add into our buildings and into our infrastructure increases our carbon footprint. So dematerialization is very important. Minimalistic design and approach is going to be the order of the day in our future developments if we want to ensure that our buildings are zero carbon right from day one. And the third important aspect is deconstruction. We build conventional concrete-based buildings still, and when we are done with those buildings, we demolish them and we rebuild them for further purposes. Instead of creating, demolishing, and rebuilding, if we can look at modern techniques like prefabricated structures, modular-based systems, building components that can be dismantled and deconstructed and reconstructed again. So every time the purpose of a building changes, you can just dismantle it and reuse those components for a future development. So deconstruction is also going to become a very important aspect of future development in order for us to ensure that our new construction, new infrastructure, and new development is zero carbon right from day one. It's very important that we embrace these aspects of sustainability, failing which we will end up with the same set of problems that we have today, and then we have to work again to ensure that we remove existing carbon emissions. Another important area of focus is innovation. I want to talk a little bit about this in an Indian context. The biggest solutions for sustainability are going to be low carbon, zero carbon solutions that are low cost, easily implementable, and that are scalable. And India has, I think, one of the biggest advantages here because we have a track record of creating low-cost solutions for various industries over the years that can be adopted across a mass spectrum. And we're going to need that same approach for the built environment too. It's very important for India to set up certain ecosystems in place in order to create this infrastructure. So what are those ecosystems that we're talking about? We're talking about creating innovation centers. We have great people, we have great talent, we have fantastic knowledge base. We need to ensure that this talent and this knowledge actually is facilitated in centers of innovation so that we can ensure that great products come out of this, products that not just help India in our zero carbon movement, but globally. We need effective financing structures to be put in place. A lot of great ideas from the R&D table don't necessarily actually come up for commercial production. We need financing structures to aid that. We need a lot of skilling and reskilling processes in place. Skilling because we need new technologies are going to come into the picture. New low carbon industries are going to be the future, and we need people to be trained and skilled in these areas. We also need reskilling to be done because a lot of our conventional labor force, which is in hard and high intensity industries, are going to go out of jobs, and they need to be reskilled so that we can use them for green labor. It's very important that all of these aspects come together in our India's zero carbon equation, like a chemical equation where you have various elements of the right quantities to balance a perfect equation. For India to achieve its zero carbon equation, we need all the stakeholders, the government, the private sector, the institutions and academic sector, the public, and the NGOs to come together in order to help achieve that zero carbon equation. And the future generation and the youth are going to be in the center of it. We have a phenomenal pool of youngsters, but we need to provide them with the direction, guidance, training, and the ecosystem in order for them to come up with these technologies, solutions, and ideas that help India achieve this long-term zero carbon equation. So I think that sustainability for the future generation can also be achieved only by the future generation. And while the present generation can provide the guidance and the ecosystem, I think it's in the youth of India and a huge opportunity that's available for the future generation of India to become part of a movement so that they don't just witness economic progress, but they actually witness it while doing what is right for the country, for the environment, and for the planet. Thank you.